This is the Thriving Dentist Show with Gary Takis, where we help you develop your ideal dental practice, one that provides personal, professional, and financial satisfaction.
Welcome to another episode of the Thriving Dentist Show. I'm Gary Takis, your podcast co-host. We have a wonderful episode for you today. It's titled The 5 Mindsets of a Thriving Practice. I'm very interested in sharing this content with you, and I think you'll find it extremely useful. But before I get into the podcast topic, a couple of announcements to make. Coming up, we have our next Thriving Dentist Masterclass. It is on April 25th. It's a 3-hour course in the evening, 7 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time. That masterclass is titled A Specific Plan to Reduce Your Overhead to 60% or Less. That's a 3-hour masterclass. Masterclass allows me to take a topic and take a rather deep dive into covering that topic in detail. We do it through a live stream format, so you attend from the comfort and convenience of your home or office. You have no travel expenses or travel inconvenience, but it's done live. So you can interact with me and you can ask questions as we go along. It's more like a workshop than a lecture. But in that particular masterclass, by the way, we've revised it and added new content because of the fact that we're in an inflationary cycle right now, and many offices are struggling to, they're seeing their overhead go up, and we need to get your overhead to 60% or less, even in an inflationary cycle. So I've added lots of information that relates to the current cycle that we're in, and I think you'll find it extremely useful. But I'll quite literally provide you a blueprint to get your overhead to 60% or less, where it needs to be in order for you to be rewarded financially at an appropriate level in your practice. So come join us. Very inexpensive. Tuition's less than $100. You get 3 hours of CE credits. You can go to thrivingdentist.com/masterclass and register and enroll in that course. As I mentioned, tuition's less than $100. We try to make it as affordable as possible. We do limit attendance, even though it's done virtually. We do limit attendance because I run it more like a workshop than a lecture. And all of our master classes have sold out. So if you're interested, go there now and reserve a seat. And I'll look forward to seeing you on April 25th. The second announcement I have before we get into our content, 5 Mindsets of a Thriving Practice, is a returning contributor, Dr. Pavel Krastev. You'll recognize his wonderful voice. Dr. Krastev has been a wonderful contributor to the Thriving Dentist Show. And today he's going to talk about basic implantology. And so if you're thinking about adding dental implants to your menu of services in your practice, you'll really appreciate what Dr. Krastev has to say. Without further ado, here he is on basic implantology.
Hello, dear friends and colleagues in the Thriving Dentist Organization. Pavel Krastev DDS with you today. Yet I will share one more tip. And today's tip will focus on basic implantology 101 for those of you that are beginning in implantology. And I will try to talk about a few things. Number one, when you're making your incisions, you want to evaluate your soft tissues. Let's say you're doing a single implant. So you want to evaluate, is the ridge flat between the 2 teeth where you're placing the implant? If it's flat, you will open the tissue from tooth to tooth. However, more importantly, if you have papillas that are intact, you want to spare the papillas, and you want to do a papilla sparing incision. So what that means is you go around the tooth and leave about 1.5 millimeters, 2 millimeters of tissue, and save that papilla and let it stay right where it's at. Don't go from tooth to tooth like it's when it's flat. And that will allow you to somewhat preserve the papilla. Now, this is done when you have, assuming that you have healthy tissues in nice pink color. Okay, if you have to do any perio treatment and you have a lot of granulation tissue and inflammation, you probably want to take care of that prior to placing your implant. The other thing that I want to mention is when you're making the incisions, in my teaching career, I spent about 14 years teaching implant surgery at New York University in the continuing education program, and one observation that myself and many other faculty have always made is many new beginners in implantology, when they make the incisions, they do a pecking motion, okay, and that's incorrect. What you want to do is you want to start to go full down to bone and sweep across at the rate that you wish, okay? When you have more experience, you'll do it faster. So take your time with that. Again, we don't want any pecking, because then you're doing this to the tissue underneath and you're not cutting down to bone. And then you struggle opening your flap, all right? So once again, straight down to bone and sweep across. Okay, then come around and do your releases, whether it's papilla sparing or not. The other thing that I want to mention that's very important, and I think many beginners probably may not know, so I'll mention it. Again, it's very basic stuff, but it's important stuff, is about the difference between single-stage approach and a two-stage approach. So, single-stage approach means that you will do your osteotomy, assuming that you place your implant correctly, and assuming that the bone density is proper, and you're satisfied, and you don't have a spinner, you don't have a wobbler, and the implant goes in with nice resistance, nice torque. Then what you do is you simply select the appropriate healing abutment, size-wise, depending on the type of emergence profile that you want to create, depending on where you are in the mouth, okay? So the healing abutments come in different widths, different heights, so you want to select the appropriate one. So all single stage means is that you place your implant and you put a healing abutment on and allow for the time to elapse for the implant to integrate. Usually I wait about 4 months minimum. That's my go-to. Okay, some of you do it sooner, some of you do it later. That's a whole other discussion. Now, let's say that the bone was not as dense as you'd like, okay, and you want to basically avoid any load on the healing abutment during the healing phase, so there's no micro movements. Then what you do is, instead of placing a healing abutment, you simply place a healing screw. The healing screw is flush with the top of the implant, and basically you're closing the soft tissues the way you opened it. So it's open, now you're closing it, and everything is buried. That's called a two-stage approach. The disadvantage of a two-stage approach is that you have to make a small additional cut when the implant is integrated and ready. It's also a little more time consuming, because once you do your second stage surgery to expose the implant and change the healing screw with the healing abutment, then theoretically you really should wait about a month before your impression for the soft tissues to mature properly, so you don't have shrinkage after you take the impression. So I hope this helps to you beginners in implantology, and it's a great field, and I'm sure you will have much success in it, and you will love adding it to your practices. Once again, thank you to the Thriving Dentist. Pavel Krastev, DDS, signing off.
Welcome back to the Thriving Dentist Coaching in Action segment. Before we jump into today's Coaching in Action segment, I want to take a minute to thank Dr. Pavel Krastev for his wonderful tip about basic implantology. Thank you, Dr. Krastev. I really enjoyed that tip, and I'm sure our listeners will too. By the way, he does videos, so we're going to include the video along with the show notes. So if anybody wants to watch the video, you could go to the podcast, click on the show notes and watch it. Today's topic is the 5 mindsets of a thriving practice. This is Naren, your co-host. The 5 mindsets of a thriving practice. Before we jump into today's Coaching in Action, I just wanted to share a story. Well, when I was 18, a colleague of mine, that was my first job while I was paying my way through school, where I would go and work here 20 hours a week, and I would drive to a place called Schaumburg, Illinois, which is 40 miles from where I used to study in Chicago downtown at Illinois Institute of Technology. And he said, Naren, you are a young man. I think you're going to do good things with your life. I suggest you listen to this audiobook. And he gave me this audiobook. In those days, we had cassette players, Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Up until the point, I used to read a lot of nonfiction, like autobiographies of entrepreneurs and stuff. That was very fascinating to me, but I never really read any kind of self-improvement book. And, because I had these long commutes, I would listen to them, and I would listen to them again and again because I have nothing better to do. But one of the things that Stephen Covey said that really stuck with me was this concept of paradigms. And the point that he was trying to make is change the way you look at things, and the things you look at change. Change the way you look at things, and the things you look at change. And pretty much what he's saying is we all have paradigms, and a lot of times they are unconscious. We don't think about them. We don't like create them with a pen and paper and say, oh, this is how we look at the world. But it's rather our, upbringing, our biases, you name it. We have these paradigms about things. And a lot of times when we are stuck, if you want to get unstuck, you have to really examine the paradigm. Do I have the right paradigm? And so today, Gary is going to be sharing with you 5 paradigms or mindsets, which in his mind, in his experience, 43 years of experience working with the best in the best of the best dentists all across the world, that he feels, that he strongly believes is critical for the ones who do amazing things in dentistry, become legends, have a very fulfilling career, do the kind of dentistry they want, make a lot of difference versus the rest. So Gary, I cannot wait to get into this episode, and I'm sure our listeners cannot either.
I'm excited about this episode, and I'll frame it this way. Think of whenever we're doing something in the practice, something strategic in the practice, you have mindset, and tactics. Mindset and tactics. Mindset are why we do what we do. Why we do. We just finished in our client book club. We just finished a great book by Simon Sinek called Leaders Eat Last. Many of you will recognize the name, of course, the author Simon Sinek, because of his New York Times bestseller, Start With Why.
We did a podcast, which is the last podcast, right?
And Start With Why. Start With Why is really, we all need grounding. Why do we do what we do? And so mindsets are why we do what we do. They kind of become our compass points. I'll make this very specific to dentistry. Compass points for your practice. Tactics are how you do it. How you do it. You need both. If you're going to achieve your full potential, you need both mindset and tactics. Many dentists are more oriented based on their education and their detailed mindset to go straight to tactics. And if you go straight to tactics without the reason why, very often those tactics will take you somewhere, but they won't take you all the way because you don't have enough of a grounding in why it is that you're doing what you're doing. So mindsets are why we do what we do. Tactics are how we do it. And conversely, if all you do is work on your mindsets, but never actually do anything tactically, you're not going to get the best results either. We need both. Right. So in this episode, we'll talk about the mindsets and some mindsets of a thriving practice. I'm often asked, Gary, what is a thriving practice? My definition is it's one that provides personal, professional, and financial satisfaction. Personal satisfaction means you're taking care of patients you enjoy, surrounded by a team that you love. The professional satisfaction means you're doing more of the kind of dentistry you like to do, whatever that is. In the case of Dr. Krastev, it's doing more implants. I'll tie it back to our guest contributor. So it's doing what you love, whatever that is. You have to self-define that. And that makes it kind of cool. Is if it's something that you love to do, the more you do it, the more you're going to be enjoying your practice, and the more that's going to lead to a thriving outcome. Of course, financial satisfaction is a little bit more self-explanatory. It's being rewarded fairly on the financial side for your care, skill, and judgment. And so I want every one of our listeners to achieve a thriving practice. And these mindsets are very important in leading to that. Now, let me go ahead and talk about these 5 mindsets. I'm going to number them just so I can remember to cover them. Mindset number 1, and I want you to hold this in every ounce of your DNA, is that dentistry rocks. Dentistry rocks. Now, why do I say that? Because we quite literally have the ability to change people's lives every day. We have the ability to change people's lives. Now, not everything we do is life-changing. I get it. But we have the ability to change people's lives every day. Could be something we do clinically. Could be something we do behaviorally. Clinically, maybe a patient comes with some very compromised dentition. Their smile just is not a strong feature. And they want you to help them have a beautiful, healthy smile. And again, through your training, you're able to provide, perhaps it's a cosmetic case, you're able to provide a gorgeous smile. And that can be life-changing to people. It can be absolutely life-changing. It could be something more behavioral. It could be a patient that maybe just needs someone to listen to them, But we have the ability to change people's lives every day. Now, think about it for a minute. How many jobs are out there where the person doing that job literally has the ability to change lives every day? I would suggest that really not that many. And yet we do. And just the perspective, Naren, of, holding in every ounce of your DNA, the dentistry rocks, that perspective can really help us carry through challenging times. That's one of the purposes of these mindsets. They're the ones that help us navigate speed bumps that we hit. The one thing I know beyond any ounce of doubt is that we're all going to hit speed bumps. Right. And when you're grounded in your paradigm, so you're grounded in your mindset, you navigate those speed bumps more successfully.
Absolutely. I'm just reflecting on what you're saying, Gary. I mean, right now, so many things are happening around the world, right? One perspective is we live in the best of times. Like humans have never been this prosperous ever in the history of humankind. One perspective. The other perspective is there is this wars and issues and inflation and all these issues and challenges.
It's gloom and doom.
It's gloom and doom. So the perspective you take on determines your outlook that day, the outlook that year, and what you do with your time. So you are saying the best dentists, the best practices have this mindset that dentistry rocks, and I'm so glad that I'm able to do this today.
And doctors, I'll ask you to personalize this as you're listening to this. Think of something you've done in your practice career that has been life-changing to a patient. Just think, I guarantee that everyone listens. We have tens of thousands of listeners.
Yes.
And I guarantee that everyone listening to this, I had this discussion yesterday with a client, and he literally said, oh, this first one comes to mind. I got many, but this first one comes to mind. And it was a patient who sadly experienced a fall, and she lost her front teeth, her two front teeth. And it was such a forceful fall that one of her front teeth was actually lodged up into her sinus.
Wow.
This is very traumatic. And again, through his wonderful training, he was able to deal with that trauma. In fact, restore this woman's smile. And imagine the difference that made in her life. As he was telling me the story, he was welling with emotion, in terms of what a difference that made. So number one, and think of how powerful it is to lead your team from the perspective that what we do is about changing people's lives. Think about how powerful leadership position that is. All right, let me go to mindset number 2. Well, I'd like to think that, Naren, all of us would like to create something that lasts, and the concept of legacy kind of comes to mind. I know legacy sounds kind of like a very bold statement. I want to create a legacy. Well, I don't mean it in that context. What I mean is that we want to create a lasting impression on the people that we have an opportunity to interact with. And it is about legacy. It is about legacy. And I want you to think about that. And I want to ask you a question. And the question I want to ask every one of our listeners is this: are you creating a legacy? And I believe the answer is yes or no. I don't think it's murky. I think it's yes or no. Now, I've asked that question to quite literally thousands of dentists. The most common answer that I get is, Gary, I feel like I'm doing really beneficial work. I'm proud of my practice. I'm proud of my team. I'm proud of my dentistry. I feel like we have a lot to be proud of. But if I'm being completely honest with you, I feel it stops a little bit short of legacy. I've heard that, some variation of that answer many times. If that's true for you, what I would ask you to do is I'll ask you a second question. And I'm not assuming that that's true. You may say, yes, absolutely. Here's some things that I can point to that have me, very much in the process of creating legacy. If that's true, man, I'm doing cartwheels down the hallway because that's amazing. But if your answer is what I've heard, a version of what I just described, not quite, then my next question for you is, what would need to change for you to begin to create a legacy? And I believe if you went to the place in the world where you do your best thinking, wherever that is, could be at the beach, on a mountaintop, alongside a river. Heck, it could be in your favorite recliner in your library. Maybe sitting on your back porch. Go to the place where you do your best thinking and answer that question. I believe every one of you could quickly answer that question if you just gave yourself the luxury of thinking about it. It could be changing your relationship with dental insurance companies. It could be maybe becoming an owner of a practice. That's what I need to do. I mean, it could be any number of things. What would you need to change to begin? Not to create, but to begin to create a legacy. And my third question is,
so Gary,
hold on there. The third question would be, when will you begin? When? Now, there's a saying in the world of ecology that goes like this. I happen to appreciate the world of ecology. There's a saying that says the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time to plant a tree is today.
Today.
Yeah. It's legacy.
Can you give us some, you have worked with some of the who's who in dentistry. Can you give us, maybe based on your experience working with these people over the years, when did that moment happen and kind of what were the answers they came up with? Just some ideas, just to kind of get a perspective on what this even looks like.
I can think of a particular client whose legacy, a part of, I think there's many pieces of his legacy, but his legacy is to go and participate in delivering dentistry to people in need all over the world. So he travels often with his team, and they go to primarily third world countries, where there's opportunity to participate in charitable dentistry for people that wouldn't have any access to care. That's part of his legacy, as part of his legacy. Just an idea, part of his legacy. I can think of another one that's much more localized, that a client of mine, she made the commitment that she wanted to be her and her practice to be the central rallying point of lifting her team members up, because she realized that if she lifts her team members up, it was actually affecting about 60 different people. Because it wasn't just the team members she was lifting up, it was their families and their dependents. So another example, different direction.
So in that example of lifting the team members up, what are some of the tangible things that she started thinking about? Encouraging
them to pursue education, to become advanced as they can. Teaching team members financial, solid financial stewardship, where many of her team members didn't have the background of solid financial stewardship. And she said, I can provide that. I can help with that. I can help budgeting. I can help with, creating a savings plan. I can help create, an understanding of how finances work. And imagine the difference that makes to someone that's never had that.
Right.
So there's part of her legacy. So legacy doesn't necessarily have to be global. It can be very specific. And I loved her perspective, because her perspective was, it's just not my team members, but there's about 50 to 60 people that are beneficiaries of my lifting my team members up.
Even their next generations, right? Let's say the kid's life is better. Now that kid's life is going to be better.
Right. A third mindset. I want you to embrace a culture of gratitude, Now, not just do gratitude, but a culture of gratitude, to truly approach each and every day with a grateful heart. Today we have an opportunity to make a difference today. There's a wonderful, this is a one time where I wish this was more of a video format than an audio format. Well, it's an audio format, so I'll simply share it with you. If you go to YouTube and you type in Louis Schwartzberg, gratitude. Louis Schwartzberg is a world-renowned time-lapse photographer. And he's also a cinematographer. He takes his time-lapse photos and splices them together to make wonderful videos. And what you're going to see when you type in Louis Schwartzberg gratitude on YouTube is a 6-minute TED Talk that he did. all about the concept of embracing gratitude. And I'm going to give you a homework assignment. That's your homework assignment, to go do that and watch that. And I would encourage you to bookmark that video and save it and periodically revisit it. And when you're feeling like you're feeling less gratitude than you'd like, maybe you revisit that to recharge your gratitude.
What's the opposite of gratitude? Complaining, right?
Whining, complaining, being a victim, all of that. Yeah, which we can, certainly encounter. But not just do gratitude, but embrace it. Embrace it with your team members, embrace it with your patients, embrace it with your community, embrace it with your family. Embrace the spirit, be grateful. And I can assure you that if you'll approach the world like that, it will be magnetic, and you'll be drawing people into your practice, drawing people into not just your practice, into your world. You'll be drawing people because people want to be around that spirit. Maybe they're not, maybe they need your model of that. They need that. And you become that beacon of light, that compass point for them. Mindset number 4. This is a very practical one. Finish the race. Finish the race. And let me explain what I mean by that. So if you've been a regular listener to the podcast, most of you know that I'm an endurance athlete. I run marathons, half marathons, and triathlons. And I love the entire world of track and field. I have my dad set me on the path of interest in track and field. And there's a wonderful historic race that goes back to the 1972 Munich Olympics, the 800 meters final, the men's 800 meters final. And again, you can go to YouTube. And the runner that I want to point out to you is a runner by the name of Dave Waddle. Dave Waddle. So type in Dave Waddle, 1972 Munich Olympics. And what you're going to see is the men's final. He was the last, there were 9 competitors. He was the last one to qualify for the finals, and he barely qualified. He was having a tough Olympics. He was having some knee issues. They didn't know whether it was arthritis or something more serious, but he was having knee issues, and he barely qualified. I remember watching that race, sitting on the couch next to my father. And my dad said, "Gary, watch Dave Waddle. He's the U.S. Entrant, the only one from the U.S. There were 2 Kenyans that were favored. There was a Kenyan and a Russian. The 3 were favored of this 9 that were running the race. But he said, watch him. Dave Waddle's wearing the baseball cap. Watch him. He's known for having a strong finish, a strong kick. They call it in shorter distance running. It's a strong kick. Watch him. Anyway, starts out the race. It's 2 laps around the oval. And he starts out and he instantly falls back. And within a matter of the first about 150 meters, he was about 20 lengths behind the pack. He was in last. And he slowly started, and they're saying, "Oh, I think maybe those knee issues are just haunting him." And it's so sad to see. And he was in last. Well, as the race continues, he starts inching his way forward, and you're still looking at like, no way. And then they hit the bell lap. He has one more lap to go, and he's now at the end of the pack, and he starts to work his way forward and forward. And when he rounds the final turn with about 110 meters to go, he goes to the outside so he can have a clear path to the finish. And he puts on his kick, and he finishes, as you might guess by my enthusiasm around this, he finishes in first place, winning the gold medal. And you would have never imagined that to be possible with the way he started the race. Finish the race. And the analogy is, whatever it is that you're doing, and I'll relate it to your practice, finish it. Whatever it is that you're doing, finish, because it's not done until you're finished. Sometimes that last piece, that last gap, is what makes all the difference in the world. So finish the race. Whatever you start, finish it. Like, for example, maybe you have bounced around with different CE tracks, and maybe you want to become accredited by the AACD, and you've got 3 of the 5 cases submitted, but then you got distracted and went off in different things. Finish the race. Finish that. Finish it. Finishers are winners. And just develop the discipline to finish whatever it is that you start. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but develop the discipline to finish whatever it is that you start. And again, imagine the leadership position with your team when you finish, because then you're modeling what you would like them to do as well. Modeling is the best form of motivation. And finally, number 5, mindset number 5, I want to encourage you to strive to achieve your full potential. Strive to achieve your full potential. Now, I want to actually put that in a very specific context. Dr. L.D. Pankey, who many of you recognize as the father of modern day restorative dentistry, and also the Institute, the Pankey Institute in Key Biscayne, Florida, was named after him. Dr. Pankey had an observation, and he called it his mastery ladder. And through many just quite literally years of working with dentists, his observation was dentists will achieve certain rungs on the ladder, and the very top rung of the ladder, the pinnacle of achievement for a dentist, he called mastery. Only 2% of dentists would achieve mastery status. And that's where literally the art and science of dentistry inside and out. You can provide it, you can teach it, you can write about it. It lives in your being. You can only 2% would achieve that, and all of us would, if we ever had the opportunity to be a patient in a dentist chair who was a master, we would jump at the opportunity to do that because of how accomplished they are. But only 2%. Right below that, there was a rung that he called highly adept. It was the second rung from the top. 8% of dentists would achieve the status of highly adept. Now, let me be clear. A dentist that is highly adept is a very, very, very accomplished dentist. Any of us would sit in the chair of a dentist that was highly adept, knowing that whatever was being done would be taken care of at a very high quality, a very high standard. They're not quite at the mastery status, but they're on their way to achieving mastery status. The third rung below that, below highly adept, was students. Now, he didn't use students in the context of dental students. It was students in terms of dentists, practicing dentists, that were on their way to achieve the highly adept status and perhaps at some point continue to go on and achieve mastery. And then there was one rung, the fourth rung, the bottom rung of the ladder. Sadly, it's 56% of dentists are indifferent. What does that mean? They don't care. It's sad. That's the reality. I believe that Dr. Pankey's observations are very accurate. But he also said that this isn't limited to dentistry. You could look at any career profession, say the same thing. Chefs, 2% are master chefs. 8% are highly adept. 36% are students aspiring to become highly adept and masters, and 56% of chefs don't care. And I think he's right. Where do you want to be on that ladder? And what do you need to do to get there? Well, those are the 5 mindsets of a thriving practice. I hope this has been useful. Let me recap. Mindset number 1, dentistry rocks. Mindset number 2, it's about creating a legacy. Mindset number 3, embrace a culture of gratitude. Mindset 4, finish the race. Mindset 5, strive continuously to achieve your full potential. Well, I hope those compass points are useful for you. Hope I've given you some food for thought. And we've got some questions for you. Let's hit pause here on the coaching and action segment and the coaching and action segment. Let's go to the Q&A segment.
Welcome back to the Thriving Dentist Q&A segment. Gary, this perhaps is one of the most inspiring podcasts we have done, at least in the last few months. So, hey, if you loved it, share it with your friends, and of course, bookmark it and come back and listen to it. Thank you, Gary, for sharing that wisdom. That's 43 years in the making. So appreciate it. Now let's jump into the questions. I have 4 questions for you, Gary. The very first one is, what specific high-value services do you recommend adding that are more likely to be life-changing for patients?
What a great question. First of all, Doctor, thank you for submitting that question. And it needs to be answered individually, because what I think are the most useful high-value services would be those services that you're interested in doing. Those services, some that come to mind, if I go back to our guest contributor, perhaps dental implants. Perhaps dental implants would be some, but I'm not going to suggest you do that because there's a need for implants. I'm going to suggest that you choose that because you would like to really learn about implants. It's something you're passionate about. So you want to pick the high value services that you're most interested in. So some that come to mind: dental implants, cosmetic dentistry could be another example. Complex restorative dentistry, the patient that has a lot of things going on in their mouth, and you're able to treat it in a very thorough way to bring them back to great oral health. Another good example. Another example would be, and this one, again, if there's interest, would be treating OSA, obstructive sleep apnea. That's not only life-changing, Naren, that could be life-saving.
Mm-hmm.
We know the tragedy of obstructive sleep apnea is that thousands of people die of breathing, of lack of air through OSA. And so not only life-changing, but perhaps life-saving. But again, don't do that because it's an interesting thing to do. Do it because you're interested in it. So you have to pick the things that you're interested in. Now, I will also tie this back to marketing. So if you're thinking, well, Gary, I'd like to do more cosmetic dentistry, but I don't seem to have patients that are interested in cosmetic dentistry, then the great news is there's a solution there. And the solution is organic SEO. Where do people go to find solutions today? I know that one. It's called Google, is where they go. It's not even the internet.
Right.
It's called Google, is where they go. And so master organic SEO via keywords and key phrases that will attract those kind of people. And maybe that's the missing link for them. Maybe you have things you're interested in, but you don't get to do much of it because your patient base doesn't seem to be interested in it. Then let's start attracting people that are interested in it. And the way you do that is through organic SEO. Naren, let's put a link in the show notes for a marketing strategy meeting with your firm, with Equa. And in that meeting, any of our listeners can click that link and schedule a meeting with Equa, where they'll evaluate the current status of your website. They'll evaluate keywords and key phrases and show you what you could do to pivot to achieve the result of attracting more people of the kind of that are interested in the kind of dentistry you'd like to do.
Absolutely.
Great question. What a great question.
Absolutely.
Oh, by the way, that link would be www.equa.com/MSM. Stands for Marketing Strategy Meeting.
Thank you, Gary. Appreciate it. Let me ask you the next question. I love what you said about gratitude, Gary. So I love this question. You make a great point about not just doing gratitude, but embracing gratitude. Any practical day-to-day suggestions?
Yeah. So I've mentioned the fact that we do book club for our clients. And right now, we are reading a fantastic book, New York Times bestseller, that's called Atomic Habits, written by James Clear. And I would actually suggest the best way to do this is to create a habit of appreciation. Recognize your team members. So you can really start, at the grassroots level. Catch your team members doing something good and compliment them on that and show appreciation. I'll give you an example. Let's say you're walking down the hallway and one of your administrative team members is checking a patient out from the procedure, and the patient has many questions. She's one of those engineering mindsets that has lots of questions. And you decide to kind of go around the corner and just listen and see how it goes. And your team member is just so patient, and she patiently answers all the questions the patient has. And even you're thinking in your head, oh my goodness, this patient could not possibly have another question. And she's got 2 or 3 more. And your team member just completely sticks with her and patiently answers all of her questions. Before you leave that day, pull that team member aside, and say, Carly, I happened to be in the hallway. It was mid-afternoon when that patient had all those questions. And I went around the corner so I wouldn't be, obtrusive, and I listened. And I want to tell you, you handled that situation so well. You were so patient. Your tone of voice was so patient. And I know that patient left, with a feeling of satisfaction in their appointment. And I want to thank you for representing the practice so well. You represented in that interaction with the patient just so much of what we're all about here. Thank you. You're appreciating it. It's gratitude. So just develop the habit and do it. So in the book, Atomic Habits, James Clear talks about the fact that if you want a habit to stick, do it daily. Do it daily until you develop the pattern of it. But that's what I would do. And if anyone is cynical, do we have cynical listeners to the Thriving Dentist Podcast?
But maybe one or two, Gary.
Maybe none of our listeners, but maybe they have a friend that's cynical. Maybe that's it. Okay. If you have a friend that's cynical, then my suggestion to your friend is, I don't think you're looking close enough. If you can't find him doing good things, I don't think you're looking close enough. Find some way. So express gratitude. Start with your team and watch how that becomes like the snowball rolling downhill, building momentum to begin to build a culture of embracing gratitude in your practice. And patience. Appreciate patience. Another good example. Let's say George is your patient today, and let's say that you know that George used to live near your practice, but he's moved, and now he lives 40 minutes away. And he continues to drive 40 minutes to your practice one way because he likes your practice so much. Can I express gratitude? George?
Absolutely.
I want to thank you. I know you drive a long ways, but I want to thank you for your loyalty to our practice. George, it means the world to me. Thanks for being such a wonderful part of our patient family. We appreciate you. There you go. Find it with your patients. Find it with your family.
Right.
As well.
Thank you, Gary. Appreciate it. Let me ask you the third question. Your message about finishing the race resonates with me. I have a pattern of starting things and not finishing them. How can I change that pattern? Is this something you hear from other dentists as well, Gary, or is this
absolutely. I mean, how many dentists have said, it's quite literally thousands and thousands. Yeah, I think it'd be useful to, get a fellowship in the Academy of General Dentistry, and they go down the path to start their fellowship. That's a big commitment. Requires hundreds of hours of CE, a written test, and next thing you know, a shiny object syndrome comes up, and we get distracted, and life happens, and next thing you know, we fall off the rails. But first thing I would do is, I would ask you to change your negative self-talk. Negative self-talk is something that happens to all of us. And I would suggest that you change it. And instead of saying, I'm a person that has a pattern of starting things and not finishing. And I would you can just change one word. I was a person that had a habit of starting things and not finishing it. And my intention is to change that and be a person that finishes the race. And just start telling yourself that, and then start following your own advice. I was, and hey, in reality, we all make mistakes. We all fall into patterns that aren't as useful as possible. And I used to do that. Now I do this, and just become someone. And maybe you start by finishing something realistic. Something that is a smaller accomplishment in scale, but no less important because you're changing your habit. For example, maybe doctor, you're that doctor, and I know I've met many who can't get to the morning huddle on time. Change it. Now, I used to be the doctor would wander in 5 minutes late, and I'm now going to be the doctor, the first one there in the morning. Change it. Great question. And I appreciate your humility and your transparency in sharing that.
Right.
And discipline. The book Atomic Habits talks about a lot of the role of discipline in habits. And if you haven't historically been disciplined, again, change the word. I was a person that didn't have a lot of discipline. And my intention is now to be a person that models discipline to all of the people I interact with.
And in that book, he talks about some hacks. Like, for example, there's one lady, she has a taxi that takes her to the gym. So, every day or 3 times a week, the taxi shows up. So she has to get out of the bed and get into the taxi. She knows once she's in the taxi, she's going. She's like, hitting the
Yeah.
gym hard, but it's just getting out of the bed, putting on the shoes, and getting out of the door is what stopped her. Just, maybe 10 more minutes, 20 more minutes, I'll sleep in. Now with the taxi guy waiting outside, she's not going to disappoint that guy because
Right.
she's one of those people who doesn't like to disappoint people. Anyways,
Yeah.
last question, Gary. Question number 4. Regarding Dr. Pankey's mastery ladder, I feel like I'm on the run defined as a student, aspiring to become highly adept and then perhaps mastery. I also have a young family and I struggle with work-life balance. Is it possible to achieve mastery status and still have work-life balance?
I'm going to absolutely answer that answer with a resounding yes. It is possible to achieve mastery and have work-life balance. Absolutely. And how can I say that so confidently? Many of my clients have done just that. Have accomplished that. And I don't believe that achieving mastery at the expense of your family, your relationships, your health, your outside interests is success. It's not success. And I believe you can have it all. You could have it all. Now, think of that, really, and maybe this is another perspective that really resonates with me because of my own interest athletically. Your road to mastery is a marathon, not a sprint. It's a marathon. And if you start thinking of it that way, if you treat it as a sprint, you're going to obliterate work-life balance in that process.
Mm-hmm.
But think of it as a marathon, not a sprint. A marathon, it's inch by inch. It's step by step. So think of it in your mind as a marathon, not a sprint. And I'm going to say it is possible because I have many, many clients that are truly, at that rung of mastery, and can honestly say they have a fantastic work-life balance. They have a great marriage, great relationship with their children. They have maintained their interest in their health. If all of this comes at the expense of your health, what is the value there? I think of Steve Jobs. And those of you that read his biography, know the tragic ending, and all the money in the world, but didn't get his health. Didn't have his health. And so if achieving mastery status comes at the expense of your health, that's not success. So think of it as a marathon, not a sprint, and step by step, and have very specific intentions in different categories. And the one thing I would encourage you to do is maintain outside interests. Whatever your outside I have many, many outside interests. Think of outside interests as being very important because it really adds texture and flavor to your life and keeps you happy doing the things you like to do. I noticed that I've had the privilege of working with many dentists that have successfully retire, when they reach the point where they like to retire. And the observation I have is that so many dentists that retire successfully have something to retire to. They're not just retire away from something, they have something to retire to. The dentists that I've observed that have challenges with retirement were so one-dimensional and single-minded focus on teeth that when they retired, they didn't have that anymore. And it was really a painful experience. So keep your outside interests, and you can have, they aren't mutually exclusive. Well, I hope this has been a useful episode. 5 mindsets of a thriving practice. As we come to the finish line today, Naren, I want to thank you, Naren, for your help hosting the podcast. I want to thank you and your team at Equa for all you do to not only support Life Smiles, but support our profession by helping dentists master the world of digital marketing and replace Delta with Google. I love that. Also want to thank our listeners. We appreciate each and every one of you. If you know of someone that could benefit from the content in the Thriving Dentist Show, please share the podcast with them. We appreciate your support. And thank you for the privilege of your time today. We look forward to connecting with you on the next Thriving Dentist Show.